Welcome, dear learners, to week 11. We were talking about Arne Næss and his books and his ideas. We learned from previous lessons that he talks about the interconnected nature of the living world, that the human beings are intimately connected with the environment. He also talks of the ecological self, which I mentioned in a previous lesson, and he cites several examples where people have been displaced from their homes, from their lands, and they feel as if it is a very traumatic experience. So there is the example that he cites of the Lap when he was accused of illegal demonstration at a river. They were building a dam on a river, and he was accused of illegal demonstration. He answered that the part of the river in question was part of himself. Næss shows how a person who has never studied deep ecology can speak of it so spontaneously as if it were in his very soul. So we can see that we are deeply embedded in nature, and nature is a part of us. Even our bodily makeup, the chemicals and the minerals that make us up, they come from the environment. So he shows this example of this Lap who thinks that he has been torn away from a part of himself when the river is going to be taken away and he is displaced. There are many influences in Arne Næss's works from the world of philosophy and from the world of psychology. He is also influenced by the principles of psychology 1890 by the American psychologist William James. So William James also talks about the consciousness of the self, and William James' ideas echoed into a lot of fiction of the 20th century. For example, there was this 20th century writer Somerset Maugham, and he was very interested in William James. He quotes him in his books. So the 20th century literature was influenced by ideas of William James. And what is the self and what is the consciousness of the self? The consciousness of the self is wide and deep and all encompassing. And realizing the self is to realize that vastness, to realize that one is part of a vast, interconnected scheme of things. He also talks interestingly about how he has been influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. So this would come as a surprise to many students, but Mahatma Gandhi's impact has been felt by various leaders around the world. Martin Luther King also, and various other leaders. His influence was felt in America, in Africa, in all those places that were struggling with the colonial oppression. So he quotes Mahatma Gandhi thus: "What I want to achieve, what I have been striving and pining to achieve these 30 years is self-realization. To see God face to face, to attain moksha, liberation. I live and move and have my being in pursuit of that goal. All that I do by way of speaking and writing and all my ventures in the political field are directed to the same end." So unquote. This is the idea of Mahatma Gandhi, the idea of self-realization that influences the ideas of Arne Næss, and non-violence is also a part of self-realization, and that also influenced Arne Næss. Gandhiji realized the interconnectedness of nature, and he used to be very kind to animals, and Arne Næss quotes that in the ashram where Gandhiji stayed, he had forbidden anyone to kill the snakes or the scorpions, and he did not even let them keep antidotes or preventive medicines. So he says the result was that nobody got bitten because people were so careful. If they stepped out in the dark, stepped into their shoes, they were doubly careful. So he says that Gandhiji always took his goat with him for milk because he refused to take milk from from farms or anywhere else, because he did not approve of cruelty to animals. So these are the things that have influenced Arne Næss, and he has talked at length in his books about his influences from Mahatma Gandhi. Næss sees the emergence of the idea of non-violence from self-realization and the connection with other living beings. So as I just said, he is also influenced by the idea of non-violence that was espoused by Mahatma Gandhi. It is something that would lead to a kinder and a more just environment, and also when we go to the last section of our lessons, we will also discuss some other philosophers and writers who talk about eating less meat, because the feed that is given to cattle, that takes up a lot of the food on the planet and a lot of the land on the planet, and in addition the gobar, etc., that leads to a lot of carbon dioxide in the air and contributes to global warming. So it is better to be kinder to other living beings, and non-violence is a good idea according to Næss. And I quote again from Næss's book, Ecology of Wisdom, quote, "The rock bottom foundation of the technique for achieving the power of non-violence is the belief in the essential oneness of all life." So one cannot take the life of another animal when one knows one is connected with the environment, when one knows that hurting something else would be equivalent to hurting oneself. So once that understanding is there, then comes the idea of non-violence. He gives examples of these principles from Mahatma Gandhi's own lives. He quotes a lot of ideas from Mahatma Gandhi, a lot of incidents from his life. Again he quotes, Gandhiji demonstrated the internal relation between self-realization, non-violence, and what is sometimes referred to as biospherical egalitarianism. So biospherical egalitarianism is trying to maintain the biodiversity by maintaining a sense of equality, justice and kindness towards the environment, and he links self-realization, non-violence, and this kind of attitude is also referred to as biospherical egalitarianism. So Arne Næss talks about the principles of Mahatma Gandhi, and he talks about some other philosophers too, such as Spinoza, which we will discuss later, and he takes the best of all these ideas, and the main idea out of it is the interconnected nature of the environment. We find this term used repetitively in various philosophies, in various movements, by various writers, by various leaders of movements. So, this relationship is very important. Biospherical egalitarianism is very important in our attitude and perception of the environment, and such things in the long run can save the future of the planet, can make the planet cleaner, and he looks at the harsh and the threatening conditions and the chaotic conditions of the world today, threatened by climate change and threatened by a whole lot of issues. Though he passed away in around 2009, but ahead of him now things continue to get worse. There is war, there are displacements, all are interconnected. War leads to more climate change impacts and greater displacements, and climate change itself leads to displacements and climate refugees. And human beings, since the dawn of time, ever since they came to the earth, they have always been victim of battles and wars. But as we come closer to the 20th century, wars become more and more damaging and destructive, not to one country but to the entire globe. If we talk about the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the way they were planned and the way they were thought out, it seemed it was child's play. If any of you see the movie Oppenheimer, you see the planning that went behind this bombing of these two cities. It was like child's play, but the results were horrific and which are felt till today. So, humanity has been a victim of its own pursuit of progress, materialism, technological progress, and then the curse of the race in technology and the resulting wars and battles and political issues and economic issues resulting out of that. So, he traces the present ecological crisis to three great movements: the self-destructiveness of war, the self-destructiveness of and exploitation and suppression among humans, and the self-destruction of suppression of non-human beings and the degradation of life conditions in general. So, there are these three curses on humanity that are basically responsible for the issues of climate impact: the self-destructiveness of war, the exploitation and suppression and the divisions among humans, and lastly the exploitation and suppression of the non-human beings. So, human beings are always isolated in history, and all history is recorded about human beings and their achievements according to the capitalist world, and the planet is by and large ignored, but the history of the planet is much larger. So, human beings can be credited with these things, and by and large the planet is just something in the background which has suffered mutely and miserably from all these kinds of exploitations. So coming to the 21st century, the rebound effects are there. Now human beings are facing the consequences of their own actions. So let's continue with this new lesson. We were talking about the destructiveness of human beings and how the non-human life has been suppressed by humans. According to Næss, environmental organizations sound the government to formulate policies to preserve nature for future generations. But the generations referred to are the generations of human beings and not non-human beings. So as I was just saying, that human history is focused on humans, ignoring the planet which is older than humans, and the time of humans is pretty small in compared to the age of the planet. So there are various policies started by the government, a lot of planning goes, but and also planning for future generations, but the focus here is only on future generations and not non-human beings. And this he terms shallow ecology or non-deep ecology. Shallow ecology is short-term ecology which only thinks about the present and thinks only about human beings and ignores the planet at large and ignores the future of the planet. So this is what he says is shallow ecology, in contrast to his idea of deep ecology, which talks about the interconnectedness of nature, which has a value system, which sees that when we are concerned about the future, we are not concerned about humans alone, but we are also concerned about the connected environment and the connected planet as a whole. That is deep ecology. What are the basics of the deep ecology movement? Deep ecology draws from diverse philosophies, cultural traditions and religious values. It is near impossible to find a single definition or single definitive philosophy of deep ecology because numerous platforms and views are comparable with it. So it is kind of open to a lot of religious ideas, indigenous beliefs, cultural beliefs. Næss himself believes in diversity of cultures because that gives a boost to saving environment. So it cannot be defined as one philosophy. It has a diverse transcultural character. Also, the time frame given in deep ecology is not fixed. There is nothing definite about happenings according to deep ecology. It resembles the grasp of art and literature when it views the universe and when it views the human relationship with the universe. Nothing can be pinned down with definite outlines. The outlines are open, the timelines are open. Deep ecology is deep into one's perceptions. It is about one's deep perceptions, which are not marred by religion, race, time, the capitalist ideologies. So deep ecology goes deeper than established historical or established capitalistic ideologies. he uses the apron diagram to show the workings of deep ecology, and this diagram does not have fixed entries. This diagram is about a smooth flow towards nature, towards understanding, towards consciousness, and it shows how deep ecology should be accessible to people from diverse faiths and cultures. There are various levels in this apron diagram, and to sum up, he brings us an 8-point program which is at level 2 of the apron diagram. So the first one is nature has inherent value irrespective of its utility. So do not value nature because of its usefulness, because of what you will get from it. This is entirely against the idea of extraction, that is the obsession of industry and technology today, that nature is only meant for extraction and exploitation. So the first point is that nature has inherent value irrespective of its utility. It is meant to be admired, to be revered, to be respected, to be given a place equal to our family. Then only something can change in the larger scale of damage that is done to the planet. And the life forms and their richness and diversity are inherent values in themselves. So trying to describe life forms and trying to understand them in terms of their importance for human beings, that is not giving respect to environment. So we talk about the coral destruction, we talk about the destruction of the seas and the oceans. So it should not be discussed in this manner that the sea is very important because we use it for our survival, or corals are very important because they are important for balancing the environmental temperatures and the temperature of the ocean. He says that the richness and the diversity also has inherent value and should not be associated with its utility. So all life forms, from the smallest to the largest, they have their inherent value, and he gives some beautiful examples from his own observations. I mentioned in the previous lesson that there is a microorganism which he is observing under a microscope in a raindrop, and it is doing a kind of ballet in a raindrop. Now we can see his deep and beautiful admiration of this life form, and he does not say that it's useless. My eye cannot see it, and what use is this to me? What do I need to admire it for? He admires it, and he sort of feels sorry that it is going to die because the raindrop starts drying up. He runs to get water so that it may not die. So the fear and the pain of that little microorganism, which one cannot even see with the naked eye, he has a feel for it. So this is the thing, life forms and their richness and their diversity are inherent values in themselves. The value is not associated with them, they are inherent values in themselves. Humans, third point, humans do not have the right to use this richness and diversity beyond their immediate needs. So humans should not and do not have the right to exploit this diversity in a way of self-indulgence, in a way of greed, in plundering, in accumulating capital. It should only be used for immediate needs. Therefore, when the idea of meat eating is concerned, he does not frown on meat eating, he does not put it down. He says it's better to not to eat meat but one has to think of human survival and humans' needs also. So he says that one should stick to the principle of need. Like Gandhiji said, there is everything for everybody's need, but not enough for everybody's greed. So this is the exact same thing, that people should use the gifts of environment for their needs, but should not exploit, should not indulge and waste. So we will come to these points in a very different light later on. He also says that a decrease in population would allow non-human life to flourish, and he says that when he talks about we remember the effects of COVID. So you must remember that there used to be animals out on the roads, animals that would normally not appear on the roads. Wild animals were seen on the roads because human beings were locked up indoors. So this exactly is demonstrated what he is trying to say, that non-human life will flourish if there is a decrease in human population. Now this is a very arbitrary kind of point, but then it does make sense that humans, if they withdraw from interfering with non-human lives, non-human life will flourish better. The present state of interference of humans with the non-human world is excessive and growing worse from day to day. So that is what it is, loss of biodiversity, and you can look in any direction, talk about the numerous crops that are there in the international market. What is all that? That is, certain fruits and vegetables are promoted at the cost of some local, regional species of vegetable and fruit that will never see the light of day, and because of this economic boost for those few products, there will be a loss for farmers who grow those indigenous species, and therefore those species will disappear. And those species, some of them are thousands of years old, and humanity has used them in ancient times, but globalization, capitalism does not care about such things. Capitalism is only based on profit. So I know that in India too, there are certain organizations that are trying to protect these local crops, and these local crops are in great variety. If you see the brinjal in the market, you will just see one or two varieties, but the local indigenous variety of brinjal, it is about 10 separate varieties, which is unbelievable, and they are unbelievably beautiful. In the same way, tomatoes, we just see one or two of you, or some that have been sort of boosted by the international market and by European cookery, like cherry tomatoes or plum tomatoes, but the color and the flavor and the taste of tomatoes, when we look at the indigenous varieties, that's very numerous. In the same way, there are spices, the turmeric or the mustard, these things that are brought to our tables, the salt that is brought to our tables. Most of these things are coming through industry. Many of these things are processed and harmful for our health. But the indigenous varieties, which are not being paid attention to, they are the healthy ones. They are the ones that represent the diversity of the earth, and human beings are interfering with that diversity because of capitalism, globalization, that emphasis on growth of economy. So when the growth of economy is forced and pushed, then there is a larger production of goods, and the larger the production of goods is, the more the need is created, more than actually needed. So human beings have become the agents of climate change through all these ideas and ways of capitalism and this emphasis on economic growth. And how can this state of affairs be changed? Is it possible to change this state of affairs to bring about a peaceful and joyful connection with all beings? So he says that the current political, economic and technological policies need to be changed. So it's not just one, it's the political, the economic and the technological policies all need to be changed, all need to be geared to talk about toning down to less, to invading and destroying the environment less, to producing only as much as is needed, and to not focusing on accumulation of capital. And here also he distinguishes between the standard of life promoted in affluent societies and then that is sort of followed by developing countries, like for example in spiritual ecology, the cry of the earth, we have these essays and we have this essay by the Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh talks about the bells of mindfulness. He talks about the American dream. Now what is the American dream? It is about a high standard of living where you have an AC and you have a car and you have an expensive flat and all that. So he says the American dream takes the costs, brings great costs at the level of environment, and that kind of high standard of living is not tenable. It is not acceptable in deep ecology, because what is acceptable is the quality of life in which the inherent value of the non-human world is appreciated. So that should be the focus of living a life of quality rather than living a life of high standards where one is blindly going towards the American dream. Yes, there have been numerous examples of people who had 5-figure salaries in America and had lots of money and lands and property. They left everything and they came back to their countries in Asia, in China or in India, and they decided to replenish the land. They decided that it gave them greater happiness to live with minimum needs on their own land, and the very fact that the land started becoming fertile, a land that was dry, they healed it and they made it fertile and they changed the deserts into groves. So that gave them real happiness, and this was appreciation of the non-human world, and this was emphasis on the quality of life rather than on the standard of living. They left behind everything which had to do with the standard of living. So we have many examples like that in India. And then finally he says that those who subscribe to these points, those who agree with these points, they must participate directly or indirectly to bring about necessary changes. If you feel very deeply about such points, if you think these points are appropriate and right, then you must try to take some action, or action directly or indirectly, to bring about necessary changes, to improve the state of things that is there in India, to restore the beautiful relationship between humans and non-humans, to restore damaged lands, to bring back biodiversity. So there are so many things, and this he hints again and again, talks again and again about the idea of beauty of action. And this is what it is. Beauty of action is taking happiness, being happy, being joyful by doing something for the environment. That is the beauty of action, and that gives true happiness, and that contributes to a high quality of life. So these were the points that he talked about, which belong to the area of deep ecology.